So here we are talking about visualization, and can you imagine that there's actually, more than like 2 things to say about that? I happen to think so. We've been, throughout this month, we've been looking at the contents of the Science of Mind 101 class called The Spiritual Path. It is the very first class. It is an introductory class that we've been doing out on the mezzanine on Tuesday mornings from 10:30 to 12:30. And if you just learned about it and you can come, please do. Just join us. However, we'll be announcing again at the end of this celebration today that this coming Tuesday, instead of that, our Spiritual Living Circle for Women is taking place. So if you show up this Tuesday, you'll be by yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, at the end of this class, one of the spiritual tools that is considered part of our toolbox in the Science of Mind, or the Science of Mind and Spirit, is this idea and practice of visualization. And we've all heard about that by now because we've been hearing about such things since the self-help book market exploded in the 80s and 90s, and we know about visualization. And yet, like a lot of things, there's a possibility that we're not actively and successfully using that concept and that tool for our own betterment, for our own healing, for our own progress. Like so many other aspects of the creative process, visualization is something that's actually constantly going on. We think about it, right? When you get a new place, you either rent or buy a new home, and you're so excited because you have made the decision. You are certain about this thing. It's not your reality yet, but you believe it so much that you lie in bed trying to go to sleep and you're decorating all of the rooms in your mind. Okay? So you actually do know how to do this, and you do it. For those of us who like to go on a treasure hunt to find a certain article of clothing or something to do a project with, you know how you visualize? It could be something you're building, or something that you're cooking, or something that you're wearing to an event, but you have this picture in your mind. And when you have the picture in your mind and you go out, you find that perfect thing. And it's so amazing, you got to tell the story of how it came to be. That's visualization. Unfortunately, we also do this with things that we don't want to experience. And we have learned this, bless them all. We have learned this from generations of warriors. We have learned this from stoic generations of copers. I was having a birthday conversation. We had a big weekend of birthdays because Rick's was yesterday and both of my sisters the day before. So, lots of connecting and sharing. Yeah. So one of my sisters, the one you haven't met, who lives all the way across the country, and I were talking about my grandmother when she was a little girl, and her mother and her grandmother. And we were talking about how belief systems are passed down. It's quite natural that circumstances cause people to respond, to react, to begin to believe in a certain way and to think a certain way. And then that's the best that they have to give us. So we just let go of trying to figure out whose fault it is. That's the thing that kids do, and we're not kids anymore, right? And we just say, you know what? Somehow I got to this point believing something that's not true. And what has happened is, as a result of believing that thing that's not true, when I think about things like that, I start to see that old stuff. I start to picture it. I start to dread that it's going to happen again. We have these beautiful sayings in our culture that say, history repeats itself. But if you sit in this room and you take one of these classes or you study anything similar, you'll say, wait a minute, the only reason that history repeats itself is because it's invited by our seeing it, by our thinking about it over and over. So this little opportunity right now is not so little. It is a giant opportunity to recognize that once again we have a creative faculty that we are using all the time. And it is producing, it is drawing to us people and circumstances and everything that's a match for whatever that picture is. And that's really great when it's how to decorate the new home, or oh, just can't wait to get in that car. I've made all of the arrangements. I'm picking it up tomorrow. I can smell it. I can feel how it is to sit in the seat. All of that. The problem is we use the same faculties for things that we do not wish to experience. So here's what happens. Ernest Holmes, I'm taking most of these insights from an article called A Spiritual Approach to Visualization by Ernest Holmes. And what he says is that in order to have a new experience, we need to be able to create a new mental image. And then we need to turn that over to. Now here's another opportunity to interpret in a way that feels right for you. Some people of a certain religious path would say that they're turning this image of this desired outcome, this thing that they are ready to have as their experience, they'd call it a prayer. We're talking about visualizing it, and still we could be turning it over to that power greater than ourselves that knows precisely what to do, when, and how to do it. We could say, as we most often do in this room, that we are turning it over to the law of cause and effect, to that thing in the universe called the creative mechanism that automatically responds to whatever is put into it and produces accordingly. So what happens is you create an image and then you turn it over. And Ernest Holmes says then go about the business of your day. Okay? Create an image, let go, and go about the business of your day. If we are fully in this image, we will be believing it. If we are fully in this image, we will be believing it. So we don't even have to worry about getting in the way, so to speak, or not being receptive, because if we succeeded in really cultivating that vision, we're already there. Our job, of course, is to stay there in our minds while we go about our day, so we continue to be open and receptive. In the movie The Secret, the Abraham material, I think I even referenced it last week, said, ask and it is given. And they broke it down and they said, you ask, it is given, and you have to learn how to receive. Or it is on the cosmic doorstep, just outside of your experience. So we get to learn how to open ourselves, in this case through visualization, to the idea of something that makes us receptive, and then that thing which already exists as possibility, as opportunity, it will practically knock on our door. Because for holding that vision, we're calling to us all the people and the circumstances and the elements necessary for its fulfillment. That's the way it works. That's not our power. That's not anything we are doing. That's cooperation. That's really what that is. So Holmes says that we need to, in order to have it, we need to be able to see it. In order to be able to see it, we need to be able to know it. In order to know it, we need to be able to think it. And in order to think it, we need to release our mentalities, our focus, from those past impressions, the past experiences, the history, what mom said, what grandpa said, what Uncle so-and-so said, what our parents went through, what their parents went through, what we experienced when we were 4. Whatever it is, whatever is not now, we get to release this idea, this belief, this perception that has power. I had somebody, one of my students, contact me over the weekend. She said, I'm just reading here in the book, she called it, that effects have no power in and of themselves. And I said, yes, that's correct. That's correct. Those effects, everything we see around us is history. That is the tangible history, and sometimes just a memorable history of what has happened before. And everything that has ever happened is the result of what has first been thought and felt and seen, and we have literally become it, we have known it, and all of that has given rise to those things happening. The trick is that whatever has happened before, no matter what it was, it's just the outcome or the product of what has been thought and felt and seen and known before.
Yes.
Now, those are keepers when we liked the results. And still we would say, what was the thinking and the feeling? What was the believing? And what even were the subsequent action steps? What went on that allowed that to happen if we want to duplicate or add to that experience? So there are a couple other things. We're told that in order to experience it, we have to be able to see it. In order to be able to see it, we have to know it. In order to know it, we have to think it. And in order to think it, we got to dump some old thinking and make room for some new thinking. So here's the other thing. Holmes suggests then, and he says that spiritual teachers throughout the ages have done this, that we find higher sources of thinking. Not higher sources, higher examples of thinking. We find reference points for greater ideas than the ones that we have been entertaining. You know, in Mary Morrissey in Prosperity Plus One, she says, she walks us through identifying some goals. And she says that they have to involve a stretch. And I thought, well, okay, if they have to involve a stretch, and we also advise that they not be a complete break from who and where you are, because, well, you know, that's just injury. That's something to recover from. That won't work, okay? But a stretch means that if I want to experience more than I yet have, more than my history, more than what I have thought or felt or seen or done or had before, then I'm going to have to think more, think beyond that, in order to know beyond that, in order to see beyond that, in order to experience beyond that. It's really funny that in this teaching, and as Christ and others have taught, we literally have to have faith in that which we cannot see. We really have to believe in something which doesn't appear to exist yet. And yes, we will be the subject occasionally of a little bit of snickering because we're believing in something that can't be seen. That's why we have each other, by the way. I don't know about you, but I know who not to tell about the new thing that I am believing in.
Amen to that.
Right? Okay. Yes, and I know who to call upon when I'm wavering and I need some support, and you're willing to know with me as a member of my spiritual family that, yes, you are stretching willingly to believe in something that hasn't happened yet, but everything says that it's possible and available, and you're ready for it, so we're going to know this together. Okay? So you know who not to tell.
Yes.
So one thing we do is we look to the examples that have been written, and some of them have been painted, some of them have been sculpted, some of them have been woven or sung or whatever the case may be, built by someone who's gone before us in that area of our dreaming, our longing, our desire to experience more. We look to those examples, and something beautiful happens. This is the spiritual side of the National Enquirer. Okay? The spiritual side of admiration. The spiritual side of revelation, of reverence, is that when we admire someone, what's happening is that part in us that's ready to be that too, that's ready to experience that too, that's ready to express that too. It says, it wakes up. It is a dormant divine potential within us to have a similar experience. Now the shadow side would be to say, oh, well, he's just lucky. Oh, well, she's got connections, you know, or she went to school more or sooner or a better school or whatever, or she's taller or he this, you know what I mean. we can come up with reasons why that thing is available to someone else and not to us, and we would be remiss. What happens when we are attracted to and inspired by someone's example is that that potential wakes up in us. So can you see? I mean, I can feel it, and so I'm guessing that you can too. If you start to imagine, and by the way, those of you who've heard me teach this before, it can be a fictional character. Okay, but you start to imagine a character, human, a person in a story or whatever it is, who embodies that which you desire to experience as well. And think about who they are and what they're doing. And think about the inspiration that their example creates within you. And recognize this in a new way. That is a part of you that is ready to be, that is coming alive in the presence of that example. Vibrationally, it's like the tuning fork thing. If I ring a C tuning fork over here, and there's a C that's sitting still doing nothing over here, this one begins to sing.
Yes.
And you didn't touch it. It didn't move. It didn't do a thing. Okay? That is the power of our awakening together. Okay. So, we said that in order to experience it, you need to know it. In order to know it, you need to see it. In order to see it, you've got to be able to think it. I got those backwards. It's experience, see, know, think. Okay? So we're back to thinking. We said let's ditch the old thoughts that are not producing the experiences we desire. We love and bless and give thanks for all who have gone before us and toiled and done their very best with what they had to help us get to where we are today. And we reach to a greater idea. We look to examples which inspire us. We recognize at last that the reason they inspire us is because we have something in us that is equal to that, and it is ready. And then what do? We do two more things. One is to go into a silent meditation or to go into a meditation where we bring in a question about this thing and tap into our own connection to divinity, to source, for revelation. Our intuition is the same as instinct, but it has these added qualities. It has self-awareness and choice. So we already have something within us which knows the right direction for us to go, the right version of that experience for us to have, the right person to request an apprenticeship with, the right phone call or email to make or send, the right thing to do, the right idea. And so another wonderful thing, after recognizing that our inspiration, our attraction, our reverence, our admiration is really the part of us that is ready to become that, is to know that we have something within us that knows precisely what that looks like for us. Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith calls this a visioning process, a creative visioning process, life visioning process. And there are several steps to it, but the primary one is this. In deep meditation, this is not an intellectual thing at all. Intellect is resting by the door, okay? What is Spirit's highest vision for me in this area? And if you want to say God or, Allah or Abba or anything, okay? Whatever it is, what is Spirit's highest vision for me in this thing? Trust your answer is the one that you get. So with that, create the picture. Do you see now you have all of these resources for accessing a higher thought, a higher idea, for recognizing that admiration and appreciation and inspiration about someone else's life is a wake-up call for you. It's a pleasant one, by the way, if you follow it. Okay? And then you have your own way to tap in and get your own answer as to what it looks like for you.
Yes.
And then you create that picture, right? We go back to the beginning. We create the picture, the mental image, and we turn it over, trusting that that mechanical, loving, responsive, creative mechanism of the universe will, as it must, produce according to that image. And all we have to do is let it go and do whatever is necessary to remain in that place. When we slip, call someone who can help us come back up. Better to figure out who that is before that moment comes. Okay? Go ahead and find a believing buddy before that moment. Okay? Have some mechanisms in place to help you get back up when you forget. That's why there's more than one of us here. So, create the image. Turn it over. Let it go and be on your way.
Yes.
Create the image, turn it over, let it go, and be on your way.
Wow.
And if you ever doubt, just remember you have all of these examples where you've actually done it a bunch of times before. And you can do it on purpose now for your good.
Yes.
So I'm going to invite us to do one other thing, which is to close by doing exactly that with something that you're ready to have as your experience now. So what I'd like you to do is just get comfortable and close your eyes. And allow me to guide you in choosing something to do this with today. If you didn't know you were ready to jump and leap and step and fly and stuff, well, here we go. Okay. So think of one thing that you would like to add to your life experience. Choose something which requires a stretch, but not a break from where you are now. Now think of some people who have done this thing, real or imaginary, and notice your level of enthusiasm rising as you contemplate this. Find that place in you which identifies with the experience. Step fully into the reality of this experience. Notice that you are present in it. Knowing, seeing, being this as real. And now, full of the vision, knowing, seeing, and being in it. Turn it over. Deliver it. Let it go. Press send. And leave it to the perfect, constant, precise, mechanical, unfailing activity of the law of cause and effect to make it so. And so as you come back into this space, anchoring this idea, open your eyes and pledge to yourself to keep your eyes single, to keep your mind stayed in this beautiful place. And remember that any time you slip back into old pictures and old ideas, just recall, all I have to do in order to experience my new life is to know it and to see it. I can know, then I'll see.